Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to AWS User Group Bosnia meetup with Darko Mesaros. Darko will talk tonight about AWS Amplify. So let's start.
I guess I can start talking now, right? Wait a second. I need to share some screen, right? Give me a sec. How does this work? Like that, but let me do this. Switch displays. And then this, and then share screen. I think I got it. Okay, cool. Share screen. Awesome. Now, I hope you can see my my PowerPoint screen, right? It should say Dev Day. Do you see it, Jenna?
Yes, it's okay.
Okay, excellent. So, cool. Let's then kick it off. Basically, what I'm going to talk about, how can you simplify your web and mobile applications with AWS serverless backends. Basically, this is an intro or a very quick demonstration and a talk about AWS Amplify, right? So I'm going to be doing a bit of slides, just kind of get you in the game, and I'm going to try to spend most of my time here today actually demoing stuff for you. So, oh yeah, before I start, my name is Darko Mesaros. Most of you know me. I'm a developer advocate at AWS based in Germany, and I cover a lot of these kind of topics. Yeah, I cover Eastern Europe and Russia. So let's talk a typical day in a developer's life, right? So what is a developer? What do they do basically on a daily basis? They get requests, right? So product owners come, hey, you know what? We need this application. We want it to be very customer obsessed. Customers want it this way. We have competition that does it, maybe better, but we want to be competitive with them. We need it super fast because we need it yesterday. Every request that comes is usually a request that was needed yesterday. We do not want to pay for it, right? It's always a thing like, let's try to save as much money even though we need to move forward. It needs to be scalable, right? It has to be able to expand like crazy. And also it needs to be relatively easy to manage and operate. So what does a developer do, right? This seems sometimes like a very ridiculous thing or a very ridiculous way to work with developers. I want this free, I want it fast, I want it cheap, I want it easy, and I want it super scalable. But in 2020, yeah, developers can use cloud-based serverless backends, right? So they can utilize the cloud and anything in the serverless sphere to help them overcome this, right? So a lot of different functionalities of applications, a lot of different elements of an application can actually be abstracted by serverless technologies. When I talk about serverless, it's very important to thought, why should I talk about serverless? Back in 2018, on the Stack Overflow's developer survey, one of the most loved platforms was actually serverless, right, along with AWS. So there must be some reason behind why this is so popular. So what does serverless means, right? If you were all here, I would kind of just ask you a question. So can anybody explain what serverless is? Well, serverless is not this, right? Serverless is not racks of empty racks of servers. Serverless is something else, right? Servers still exist. They are there, but serverless is not let's say a data center model. Serverless is not a hardware model. It's an operational model, right? So it's a place where you don't have to. It actually means that you do not have to provision or manage any servers, any infrastructure, no matter what, right? You don't have to care about it. It's built to scale with usage, right? So the more you use it, it should automatically scale. That's how it was designed, right? So you don't have to worry about, creating load balancers or potentially creating enough capacity to scale. availability and tolerance should be availability and fault tolerance is built in again with the nature of serverless, right? With all the the way it's architected in the backend and how do you use it, it should be a highly available and very, very fault tolerant. And one of the most important things about serverless when it comes to, well, doing something new and something modern is, well, you only pay for value. So it's not just, hey, you don't purchase things up front, you don't have things that idle. You literally are able to pay for value of the things you have delivered. So if you have 1,000 requests, you will pay only for the 1,000 requests that actually bring you money. You do not pay for just it sitting idling by. And when we talk about what is serverless, it's not just Lambda functions. People think it's Lambda functions, that's serverless. It's maybe DynamoDB, but there's a lot of different things, right? From compute platforms such as Lambdas, right? Even Fargate, even containers now can be serverless technically. To databases, absolutely, DynamoDB and Aurora serverless. And at the end of the day, our entire CI/CD offerings, such as developer workflows, code pipelines, code builds, code deploys, are all technically serverless, right? So there's a lot of things that we can kind of utilize serverless for, and well, have it much more interesting. So what kind of obstacles do developers face this year or any other year recently on AWS? We have 165 plus services. This is an outdated slide, so we even have more things right now here, and it keeps growing, right? When a developer sees this, sometimes it can be, wow, where do I start? I want to build an application. I want to do this quick and dirty application, but what should I use here? Should I use, EC2? How do I store data? Which database should I use? Should I use NoSQL, or which NoSQL database should I use? So there's a lot of different things that you have to make a choice on, and this can be a problem. Now, there's a lot of many lines of boilerplate code. When you want to do some cloud formation, then you want to do some configuration management with Ansible or Chef or Puppet, then you maybe have Jenkins, your Jenkins workloads or workflows. How do you define it? There's a lot of different things you should define in order to start with something. Let's say you're a front-end developer and you want to make an application that, I don't know, takes notes, right? So you want to build an application that just you can enter notes. Not simple as that. What kind of things do you need in order to have that? You need service to host your application. You need a database. You maybe need a authentication method. Maybe you need a search engine, right, to search through all the massive nodes. And you need all of that to be scalable. You need to have that all scalable, all secure, all, fault tolerant and all that stuff. So you would call a guy because you're a front-end developer, you work in JavaScript, you work in React. You would call somebody, hey, you know what, can you provision me this and that? And I'll work on my little application. I'll even make you a container. I'll give you a container and you can just pass it on to AWS. How about we do something else, right? How about we introduce something like AWS Amplify? So what is AWS Amplify, right? So AWS Amplify is this framework, right? It's a developer platform that actually allows developers to build secure, scalable mobile and web applications, right? So it gets you this, basically this little single framework that you can use to build all these things, right? It helps you provision specific resources in the backend that will be used by your mobile or web application. So it is pretty useful, and it's all done through the CLI, right? You want to add something, I mentioned you want to add authentication, you can just run Amplify add auth. Amplify will add a Cognito user pool to your application that you can use here. You want to add some storage, Amplify add storage, right? You can add an S3 bucket like this case. You want an API, you want GraphQL, or you want a REST API, Amplify add API. And if you want to all push those changes off to the cloud, well, just do Amplify push. Again, there's a support for a lot of open source libraries here. It's because it's a relatively language agnostic platform, so you can do things, you know, from standard JavaScript to iOS and Android to React, React Native, Vue.js, and Angular, right? So all these platforms exist, but since this is actually an open source project, feel free to submit a pull request to any language of your choice, and I'm sure that the owners of the AWS Amplify open source project will be happy to accept it. Now let's do something. Let's actually, instead of me talking over this presentation, let's actually do something. Let's create a Amplify web application. So I'll stop my share right now because I will exit from my slide deck and I need to show you my terminal. Let's do that. And I will go to, where is this, and this, and this, like that. Share screen, share, awesome. Share, cool. You should be able to see my terminal right now. So I have here, well, I have a working example of an application, which I'm just going to leave in there. But in general, we will start from scratch here. So first thing, what we need to do is we need to install Amplify. So how do you install Amplify? It's an npm package. So npm install-g at AWS Amplify CLI. So we are installing the Amplify in CLI, which is going to be used to actually do things here. So it takes a moment or so to do it. It's actually like once you pass kind of this phase, everything else is kind of very hand-holdy. So it will hand-hold you through the entire configuration aspect of it, through the entire adding of additional resources. And there's so many great examples out there on GitHub and our own on the Amplify framework page that yeah, you'll see. So I believe I have this already installed. So now it's just kind of going through some checking, but it should be fine. Cool. Awesome. We have Amplify installed. One of the things we need to do is configure it, right? Amplify configure. And it's going to ask us a couple of things here, right? So basically, it tells us, hey, you know what? I will create a user for you. So what you don't see right now, it has actually opened my management console well, it actually has opened my AWS management console on the bottom here. So it's a trend and continue. It's, you know, choose a region. I will choose EUS2. It will actually ask me, hey, create a user, right? I will, yeah, that's fine. It actually opened up an IAM console for me right now to create this user. Next permissions. I'll give it some permissions like that. So create user, that's fine. So what it has done right now is it's created I have created a user right now in IAM. I have gotten its secret and access keys, which I need to do that. Let me add an access key. Here's the thing. I need to pause my screen share for the moment. Give me a second. And resume screen share. See, that's me being secure. And I will create an Amplify stream profile. Awesome. I have configured Amplify to be used now. Let's get started. Let's actually create something. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm create a directory here for my Amplify applications. So MK there.
Darko, sorry for interrupting. Just
Yes.
quick question. I saw this policy is administrator access.
Yes.
So is there a way to use IAM user with less privileges?
Absolutely.
Or it has to be admin access?
So the administrator access is given by default because it works out of the box. If you don't want to worry too much about it, but the best practice is absolutely do not use administrator access for this. Again, this is just a user that will be creating resources from your workstation, right? So this is just a simple way. If I'm an admin, I'll create an admin user just to play around with this, but you can definitely reduce the the requirements of a user. Now, depend on what you're going to do, right? So because it's basically going to create a separate AWS CLI profile on your workstation, which according to its permissions can create or cannot create certain resources. So it's really up to the fact of what do you want to do with Amplify in this case, right? So if you want to only create an application, like it does not need access to Redshift, for example, or Kendra or SageMaker in this case, because it will not use those services. You can actually remove those kind of things.
Understood. Thanks.
Okay. So let's make a directory here, Amplify.js. I'm actually typing it off a little text pad I have here. App src. Awesome. And then let's change there into this one. And then let's just add a couple of packages, right? A couple of files. Touch package, JSON, index, HTML, Webpack config, JS, and src app.js. So we're going to be using Webpack here to create our web application. So this is why we're creating a bunch of these files, and I'm going to be adding some text to it so we can kind of add all those things. So if I want to do, first of all, I need to edit the package JSON file. And by editing this file, I'm going to actually add, I have it here, where is it? Cool. So I am adding, this is a typical package JSON file with all the dependencies and how our scripts will look when we run npm. Because we're using Webpack, we need a couple of these things. So again, let's do this and just npm install. The favorite command, which downloads like 47 gigabytes of data. So hopefully this goes relatively fast. I'm pulling all the requirements for Webpack and for all the things we need here for Amplify. Awesome, that's done. So if we have a look here, run the tree command. Oh, that's too bad. I was supposed to run the tree command before, but basically what we have here is we have these files, we have the node modules, which is all the modules installed, the Webpack config file, and the index.html, which is empty. So what we're going to do here, we're going to create a little web application that you can. I'm just going to show off a couple of things that Amplify can do. Right? So now, next thing, we need to add something to that index.html file. So we will go here and index.html, paste it. Now, this is a simple index.html file. It has some nice logo from Amplify, but the main brunt of the application will be actually in the app.js file. So this is just a boilerplate HTML file, which we will not be touching anymore today. Going back here, now one of the things we need to do is configure Webpack. Actually, export a couple of things. Tell it, hey, where's the app.js file that we're going to be using and all that stuff. So we can actually enable Webpack to run our web application through npm. So Webpack. No, this is not a demonstration of Webpack. I'm not an expert in Webpack, but you will see just how it works. Right? So simple as that. Again. We just, point it to an app.js file, all those kind of things. Nothing special. So now if we do npm start, hopefully, this seems like it works. Let me click somewhere here, like that, and do sharing. Let me share something else. Can I share that? Yes, I can. Cool. Now I can do localhost and then 8080, and that's it. So this is a current application that's running. It does nothing because it's just a simple application that we have installed. So simple as that. Now let's go back to the terminal, like so. Cool. Awesome. So in this case, now what we have here is we have a bland application that does nothing. But let's add something to it. How do we add some functionality to it. How do we add those backend systems that I talked about? Well, first of all, we need to create an Amplify application. How do we do that? Amplify init, right? So I will add Amplify JS app is fine. I will name the environment dev because we're developing. I can choose an editor. So this editor is just being chosen because once we want to edit some files, Amplify will actually open up an editor to edit certain files. I'm going to use Vim as I'm just using the terminal in this case. I will be building a JavaScript application like that. And I will not use a JavaScript framework. It's a pure JavaScript application that I'm running off here. Should be super simple. Source directory is src. Distribution directory is this. This should be the build command, start command. Literally, I can accept all the defaults in this case. And now it's going to be using CloudFormation because, in essence, all of these things are just a front for CloudFormation. So Amplify takes care of all the things to create proper CloudFormation templates and actually deploy them to AWS and manage them and such. So, do you want to use an AWS profile? Absolutely. We have created one with Amplify configure, right? So I say yes, and I have this Amplify stream profile that I've created before. That, and this should be it now. It's gonna just kind of initialize this project in the cloud. It's gonna create a couple of things that's required for this. So it's gonna create a CloudFormation profile with a bucket, with an IAM role, and all the things that it needs to actually function with this project of ours. Once we have done this, right? Once we have done this, we need to add some additional features, right? So let's give this a moment. So it has created a bucket, it created a role, so this should be done. Awesome. So if I run Amplify status, it should show us the current status of the Amplify application. What resources does it have in the cloud? And as you can see here, we have nothing. We just initialized the application. We have our directory here. We have an additional directory added here called Amplify, where actually some Amplify code is stored, like the generated CloudFormation templates and everything it will use for those resources. It actually stores them in Amplify. So let's add something. So we are creating a little application that will, once you click a button, add a text to a database. It's a dummy application, the most hello world-ish application I can think of, but we need a database, or we need an API to store data somewhere, right? So we will not write directly to the database, but we will use something called AppSync on AWS. So AppSync is this GraphQL basically interface that is able to act as an API. It's basically a GraphQL API endpoint that will interact with Dynamodb in the backend to store your data from your application into a Dynamodb. And also it can retrieve it and do subscriptions and whatnot. So how do you add an API to Amplify? Amplify, add API. Oh, that's it. Will ask me, do we want to use GraphQL or REST? I mentioned I want to use GraphQL. GraphQL it is. Give it an API name provider. Now, due to some restrictions, I have to remove the dashes, so I can just Amplify JS app. I will use an API key for this case. I have not added a cognito pool, so I will just be using the standard API key for this. I'll give it a description, Amplify JS app, like that. 7 days is fine for an expiration for this key. I'm done. I'm not going to be configuring anything regarding my API. But I want to do something with the schema. So do you have an animated SQL schema? GraphQL schema? I don't. Do you want a guided schema creation? Yes, I do. So it will actually guide me through create a schema for DynamoDB. Now, it kind of gives me two examples, what describes my project. Single object with fields like a to-do, like with ID, or one-to-many object relations. It will generate a proper schema depending on what you choose here. I'm going to use a single object with fields, and I'm going to edit the schema right now. So again, it has opened Vim for me, and this is the schema. This is the GraphQL schema of my application well, it's an example, but this will be sufficient, right? So it has a type called to do, and it takes these fields, ID, name, and description. So these fields will be present in our API and our database, which is DynamoDB. And how do you actually define that this should be a database? You add the @model transformer. So this transformer in itself will actually tell Amplify, hey, provision a DynamoDB database for this as well. I'll just save this like that. And that should be it, right? So I have told Amplify how I wish my API to look. I have told it I want a GraphQL. This is the name. I want to use an API key. This is how my schema should look. I could have added more things to the schema. Like I could have added, users, or, well, potentially not users, but like maybe something like tags or whatnot, right? I could add more things to the schema. It would reflect those changes in the backend. So how do I provision this right now? Amplify push. This, in essence, will do the same thing as before. It will create an API or AWS AppSync. It will use AWS AppSync to create this, create a database. But it will also ask me, like you see here, do you want to generate code for your newly created GraphQL API? So what it will do here, it will actually generate queries for this API. It will generate queries, and those queries will be used by your application for writing, reading, and reacting to, let's say, a subscription, right? Having a subscription to this database. I say yes, it will create these things for JavaScript, and it's going to add them just to these SRC, GraphQL, whatever. I want to generate all GraphQL operations, such as queries, mutations, and subscriptions. That's fine, and it's going to do that. So again, it's going to go again right now. It's gonna go to CloudFormation, create a CloudFormation chain set, and gonna add like AppSync in this case, and DynamoDB and API keys and all the things it needs for this API to work. Now, once this is done, we need to add some things to our application. So we actually, our application is just blank, right? It does not do anything. We need to basically add something to it so it will perform these changes. Now, I'm going to copy paste a lot of code because, well, technically we have a lot of code here. I don't want to spend my time in typing out, 50 lines of code. So I'll copy paste what I have here, and all of this is actually available on our pages. I'm not inventing any of this. So if you want to play around with this, it's freely available for you to do so. So let's give it one more moment here for this to finish. Also, one of the things that you could have noticed when I was doing here, it actually told me that this model does not have an authentication method. So this model that I've created has no authentication method. So basically, it's not super secure. On some things, for example, if we were creating a to-do notes app, you would add a note per user so that like you can add an owner to a specific note entry or in this case, a database entry based off of which user created it. Cool. So almost done. We have created a role, and resolvers, AppSync are created. Now the DynamoDB table has been created as well. Again, all of this is done literally in real time. I have not pre-cooked this anything, and you can see how long does it take me for me to do this. I remember unfortunately I'm not showing like Cognito here, like authentication, but back in my time when I started programming, I did something in PHP, right? As everybody. So it took me so long to actually create an authentication method for PHP because I was doing it all from scratch. I was having my own database, adding users, adding authentication methods, making sure it's relatively secure. It took a lot of time. But here, literally, Amplify add auth, and I have a whole authentication backend ready for me to work. In this case, I want an API, Amplify add API. So is it complete? It seems like it is. One of the longest things that takes when it comes to Amplify, if you add search capabilities to your data, it actually launches an Elasticsearch cluster, and that takes like 20 minutes. So yeah, but there you go. So it has actually created a GraphQL endpoint. It has created a GraphQL API key, and this can be used right now, right? So if I would run npm start right now, well, it wouldn't work because, again, my application does not exist. There's nothing. So my application, if I do here app.js, it's blank. So let's add some logic. Let's add some program code to my application before we test anything out. So again, I will be copy pasting here a lot. So let's have a look. So no, not that. Where's my list? Okay, cool. Cool. As you can see here, it does a lot of imports. Again, it just amplifies API and also uses the GraphQLs we have created, right? Mutations, all those things. If I run this right now, save it, like that, npm start. And I need to go back to my, let's try this and share. Now, this is the thing I have created before. If I click add data, it will show mutation results, use app sync AWS user group Bosnia. So literally, whenever I click that button, it will write an entry, or it will execute a mutation, which will create an entry in a Dynamodb table. So to show you this, if I go to console, AWS, go to Dynamodb, and find the table, which is, I believe it's this one. I'm not sure. Let's have a look. How many items does it have? No, it's not that one. It's this one. Yeah, there you go. So you can see here that it has created this entry right now. That's it. If I click on it once more, it will add a new one. So if I would refresh it, there's more. That's it. It was able to run a query, which is basically a mutation query, to create this entry into Dynamodb through AppSync. So it doesn't write it directly to Dynamodb. It actually uses AppSync to write these things with GraphQL. Okay, going back to this. Stop it. So if we want to go have a look at how does this look, if I go to SRC and GraphQL, and there are mutations, how to create a to-do, right? So this is how you create a to-do. This file was automatically generated with Amplify, and it actually, how does it create a to-do through GraphQL? So simple as that, right? You didn't have to make these. It's all generated through Amplify doing creation. Now let's add some more functionality to our application, right? So SRC app. Let's show off some other things related to those GraphQL. So let's show things. Let's show items on our page as well. So if I know, that's a bad paste. Vim can be finicky when you paste things in. So this thing will basically get the data. So it will, on a refresh, get all the data through GraphQL. Again, the list to-dos is we're importing list to-dos from this pre-generated GraphQL query. And let's also add something, because GraphQL supports subscriptions. So what this will do right now is basically it will output anything on the screen. It would output the thing on the screen as soon as it's written. So if I click a button to write something to the database, a subscription will be triggered, and it will write what I have written in on the screen again. So my case is super useless, but let's actually show you how it works. So WQ npm start. And again, the good old switcheroo. Oh, where are you? This one. So if I reload here, I can see the query results are these. So it has actually queried the database and has returned the 2 entries that I have. If I click add data, it will say mutation results. This is the result of a mutation, but also the subscription has detected something has changed and there's a subscription result now written onto the page. So if I would do this again, show this one and that one. These are just 2 because they're just queries. They're triggered only on refreshes and you can see them like this. Simple as that. All of those things are super useful for application, like, absolutely reading and writing stuff, absolutely. But like subscriptions are great for if you want to create a chat application or something that's relatively in real time. Going back to this, awesome. That's cool. Now we have added all of those things. And if we have a look actually, Amplify status, we will see, Amplify status. We will see all of these things that exist here. Right? We have the current environment is in dev. We have an API deployed. We have a GraphQL endpoint and a GraphQL key also present here that we can use. But this is now running on my laptop. So if you remember previously, it's all on localhost. So how do we actually make this run somewhere in the wide world? Well, what do you need to basically have an application running on the internet? You need hosting, right? So let's add some hosting. Amplify, add hosting. It will ask me how to choose the hosting. In this case, I will be using the Amplify Console, which is another feature of Amplify, which is, in my experience, super underrated. So it's an amazing feature. If you can use Amplify Console, you should. It's an amazing way to host static web applications with all the bells and whistles you need, such as custom domains, CI/CD, SSL certificates. Amazing thing. So we'll be using Amplify Console in this case to host our web application. So if I do this, it will say, do I want to do a manual deployment or do I want to do a Git-based deployment? I'm just going to do manual deployment because I don't want to configure now Git. So I'm going against the rules, but let me do some manual things now. Click on that, and that's it. So if I do Amplify publish, it will basically create all these things, the same thing as before. So it will say me, hey, you know what? The hosting is going to be created. So yes, well, and that's it. Again, makes CloudFormation changes for you. It creates all the things that are necessary. It will generate CloudFormation templates, and it's going to actually make those CloudFormation changes through the console like this. Once this is done, I'll show this. I'll show this to you how it all looks through the console as well. Now, besides this, you can do also other things, right? So in this case, I've showed just a simple way of adding an API with a data storage or a database endpoint, and I've added some hosting. But you can also do things such as, I mentioned search. You can add an Elasticsearch cluster to this. You can add authentication, which is super useful, right? You can add a data store. It will basically create an S3 bucket where you can store some data. You can add AIML like predictions. You can add some analytics. You can potentially set up push notification. You can do even AR and VR. Like you can do a lot of different things with Amplify for your application. But also you can import existing resources to your application as well. So it's not just that you can create this for, you can literally just, like, for example, if you want to import a Cognito pool, you can just import it. You just have to specify it inside of your Amplify configuration file what you want to have as part of your application. So it has zipped my application. It has uploaded to an S3 bucket, right? And it should be available now on this address. But let me again now do the screen sharing dance. Awesome. Open up a new tab, paste this here, and awesome. There you go. My application is running. So it has deployed with the existing data. So with the data that I had already running, it's already there. So the query results are there, the mutation and the subscription result is available. So if you would go to this web page right now, it would be public and you would be able to access this. So it took me, well, what, half an hour with a lot of explanations to deploy a very simple application to the cloud by using my webcam broke. By using, can you hear me now? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. For some reason, my webcam stopped working, but that's fine. Let me see if I can edit. Yes, I can. That. Okay, back. So it basically took me that much to deploy an application, a fully blown front-end JavaScript application with some serverless backend elements to the cloud by the use of Amplify API. And if I would go here to the AWS console and go to AWS Amplify, and this is where the Amplify console sits. If you go here, Amplify JS app, this is where you would have it, right? So again, it's a super simple application, which is a manual deployment. Technically, it hosts it all on S3, but it's just a really simple way to host something. Like I host my personal blog on this. I host some additional, for example, like workshops I run. I host them all through this Amplify console. It has the full provision, build, deploy, and well, it's a full CI/CD pipeline for my applications built into Amplify. And it supports SSL certificates with a custom domain. And it also supports like password protection when it comes to like your subdomains. Like if you have a test environment or a test branch, you can per branch give it a different domain name and a different protected with password as well.
Darko, there is one question. If you can take a look on the chat, please.
I would love to, but I see a chat. Sorry. Can you show CloudFormation? Yes, absolutely. So CloudFormation, let's go here. If I go to CloudFormation, it actually creates a bunch of stacks. So let's have a look. So ignore the test one. So this is the one that I created before, but basically this is the main stack that has created. And if you go here, it has a bunch of nested stacks underneath together with roles and additional things. Like you can have a look at its template, absolutely, right? It's all there for you. It seems a bit complex because it is actually a computer generated template at the end of the day. But in my use case, it has created one stack with 4 nested stacks required for my Amplify application, right? This is for the Amplify console, but like let's have a look at what is this? What does this create? This is a GraphQL stack. Right? So this stack has created all the things required for GraphQL. In this case, if I have a look at this one Crypta, AppSec Resolver, IAM role. So it has intelligently split those things up into different stacks. For example, this one has no resources at all, right? So again, different things are present here. And if you want to have a look at these templates, you can find them on the console themselves, or you can switch back to your Amplify folder and see them there. So if I go back here, there's an Amplify directory. I go to backend. There's API, Amplify API, this one, and stacks. There's custom resources like this, right? So it has all the things here that you need to create, for example, for these, right? So, and this is, the schema I have talked about. It's actually here, the schema. If you want to change this, you can do as well and do Amplify update as well. So, so all the things are actually present here. If you go to hosting, cd Amplify hosting, this is the template. Okay, it creates a CloudFormation template that creates a Amplify branch. That's it. Yeah, this kind of concludes the simple short demo. All of this is actually available on our Amplify GitHub page. So if you go to aws-amplify.github.io, you have a nice getting started document that basically does the same thing I did. You can do it from your laptop, and it's super easy. Like, again, it gets more complex the more complex things you do, but this is kind of a short intro. And I really advise all people who are developers or who are building applications, who, you know, if you want to make something, don't try to reinvent the wheel. Try to use what exists out there. Try to offload all of your, let's say, non-value elements to the cloud. Don't spend time in creating an API by yourself, right? Just use Amplify and add a GraphQL API. Don't spend time reinventing the wheel and making an authentication method or an authentication backend. Let AWS Amplify do it for you by the means of Cognito, right? Don't spend your time on these things, because the only value, if you have a look at it, like, what brings your application value, right? Does the cloud bring your application value? Not necessarily. Does an amazing authentication method bring your application value? No. What brings your application value is dramatic. It's this, right? It's your code. It's your business logic. This is what brings your application value. Focus on this. Don't focus on creating many different things at the back end. Don't focus on operating it too much. If you can use something like this, not everybody can. I understand that. Not everything is a serverless application, but if you can, if this suits your needs, just do it. It makes it better for you to just focus and go build on your application, build your workload, build your business. Now I should kind of switch back to my presentation, but yeah, let's not do that, and let's do this. And yes, is there any more questions I can answer? Feel free to type them in chat or speak them out loud.
Hi, Darko. Dragan.
Hey, Dragan. Hi.
Do you have any examples of startups that currently use Amplify in production?
I am sure. I don't know them by on top of my head, but I am sure if I would look into it, there are a bunch of them that are using it, because it is a very popular thing right now. But I would have to get back to you on that one. I really don't know it off the top of my head. But it is definitely a production grade system. It's not something that is just in beta. It's something that people can and should use in production. I don't see why not, right? There are some limitations, of course, but again, I see this as a fully valuable or a fully viable way to run applications in production.
Thanks. And the second question is regarding VTL.
Okay.
So is there any plans, or do you know, like, any news that maybe VTL could be upgraded by something else?
Can you just, I'm not familiar with the VTL is.
Sorry, patch velocity templates.
Well, that's something I don't know. The best source for that would be basically the GitHub page. If there is an issue there open, or if there is not, I suggest that you open it up or let me know, and I'm happy to follow up on that, because
it's not an issue. Just it's like really painful to use, because it's not any programming language or anything like that. It's just something different.
I'm sure that there is an open issue on GitHub about that. If it's that bad, I'm really not 100% sure on that. But if it is really something that is a pain, I'm sure that somebody else has noticed it and maybe opened up a issue or even a pull request to do something like that. But one of the things you can do, can you just send me a message later on offline, so I can follow up with that, because I really want to check that out.
No problem.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dragan. Okay, I guess no more questions. So if you have any more further questions, any comments, please feel to reach out to me via Twitter, or you can find me on LinkedIn. My name is, again, Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'd be happy to answer any more questions if you have. And thank you very much, Janan, for organizing this. I appreciate it, and especially I like that we have all switched to streaming right now. It doesn't work as well as when it's in person. I always much more like to spend time with you all in person, but hey, these are the times.
Well, until we resolve these ongoing issues, we will continue with these online meetups. Thanks a lot, Darko. As usual, presentation and demo was amazing. Next Wednesday, I think we will have a new online meetup with Alex Casalboni, so please join us. We will talk about how to start startup and on AWS, and well, I think after those news where AWS will give some credits to startups, you will find useful answers on that meetup. So please join us. We will announce that meetup, I think, tomorrow morning. And see you next Sunday. First Wednesday and then Sunday. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.